You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
You're listening to Mission Log the Orville, an episode-by-episode discussion of the adventures of the crew of the USS Orville.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Log the Orville. Join us as we consult the Book of Kelly and explore the episode Mad Idolatry for meanings, morals, messages, and to see if it aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi.
And I am Mike Richards. Mission Log the Orville is a conversation that depends on your participation. Share your thoughts, ideas, and tell us what we missed at ML_the Orville on Twitter, Mission Log Pod on Facebook. You can email us at missionlog-theorville@roddenberry.com. And if you're watching this on the Roddenberry YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe. And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode. Now here's Jessica with the recap.
Mad Idolatry, Episode 12. What does the captain do after his shift? Well, go room to room seeing if his crew of friends wants to grab a drink. No one else is available, so Ed is left to have a drink with Bortus and Clyden, which means learning all about how the Mocklins unwind. First with a parasite-inducing drink called Upsada, and then a friendly game of Latchcum, which is basically hot potato with surprise knives. And Ed finds that out the hard, I should say sharp way. He finally decides to call Kelly to help him nurse his bruised hand. One sip of liquid courage, and Ed confesses that ever since Derulio visited the ship, he's been thinking about his relationship with Kelly a bit differently. Well, maybe they should go on a date and see how things go. They both like the idea and decide to go ham on the alcohol, despite tomorrow being an uncharted space day. The Orville approaches a brand new, beautifully bright hangover star, challenging Ed and Kelly's bad decisions the night before. A distortion is picked up in open space, an anomaly that is beeping really loudly. Isaac suggests taking a shuttle to investigate. Kelly joins him along with Gordon. As they approach the anomaly, suddenly they are thrust into atmosphere, where once there wasn't, now is a planet that appeared out of thin air. The shuttle has partially lost helm control, and they're veering towards the ground, so they have to sit down and assess the damage. Act 1. The damage is able to be fixed, but that leaves Kelly with an hour to take a look around. She sees a Bronze Age type village in the distance and decides to take a closer look. Isaac reminds her to proceed with caution, cultural contamination being of concern, blah, blah, blah. Ugh, she knows. She proceeds cautiously by stepping on a branch and startling two little girls who are playing close by. She spooks the children, and as they turn to run, one trips and cuts her forehead. Kelly introduces herself to the little girl and hopes to gain her trust so that she can fix the cut. Oh yeah, she was going to use this bio-fixing thing on Ed's Latchcum prize. Oh no, the wound is fixed, but there is now a bigger problem. Multiple people have arrived in time to see Kelly's miracle. Kelly runs off, recognizing her error, and the little girl she helped is in awe and repeats her name. Kelly. Act 2. Admiral Ozawa instructs the Orville to stay in orbit for 72 hours to learn what they can about the mysterious planet. Ed ends the call without telling her about Kelly's cultural contamination. He should have, but it's a serious charge and they haven't had their date yet, so maybe that's why he didn't add it to the report. 12 hours into research, and there is no more insight as to the planet's origin. And just as their boredom gives way to maybe another rousing game of Latchcum, something happens. The planet disappears. Isaac now has the data he needs. He surmises that the planet exists in two universes, theirs and another one with a sun similar to the one that they have here in order to sustain life. John Lamar thinks that based on the tight orbit of the planet, it should return to this universe in 11 days. That's a lot of downtime on the ship to stay in orbit, so Ed makes sure to put it to good use by finally taking Kelly on that date. And after making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with their mouth, it seems like Ed and Kelly are back on. Act 3. Day 11 arrives, and so too does the planet. But initial scans are showing a very different, more populated and evolved society. The crew take a shuttle down to the planet to investigate. The village Kelly saw is now akin to a 14th century city. Isaac has been able to determine that while the planet was in the other plane, 11 days may have passed for them, but this planet has experienced 700 years since. Gordon spots some laundry hanging on a line that the crew can change into in order to blend into society and learn a little more. In a big old moment of, well, what did you think was going to happen? The crew walks right up to the clothes, and the owner of those clothes steps out of her house because, duh, we see her eye Kelly specifically and then return into her home without saying a word. She returns with her child in hand, begging for Kelly to bless him. Reluctantly, she does with the aid of Gordon. Disguises donned, the crew heads into town, but as they do, they see hanged people lining streets. Ed stops a man who happens to be passing by and asks him what happened to these people. It's a shame, really. If only they weren't deniers of the word, they still might be alive. And so they're there as an example. When asked further what word he's referring to, he says plainly, well, the word of Kelly. Uh-oh. Act 4. The crew arrives in town just in time to see a public trial. Men accused of theft. A priest cuts each man's arm and proclaims that if they are not guilty, Kelly will come and heal them. Ed stops Kelly from jumping up there and stopping this, knowing that it will only make matters worse. They push on, heading to a large central structure where a giant Kelly statue has been erected. Looks like we're going to need a bigger Bible. Admiral Ozawa is pissed. Ed should have included this in his first report. If Ed protects an officer in his future reports, he has a shiny future in porcelain. She forbids him to take any further actions, that a planet that matures in 700 years and 11 days will soon reach space travel. They are to wait for them to reach out. People are dying in her name, though. And Kelly can't do anything. Well, looks like Ed doesn't know when to listen. They head back to the planet with only 31 minutes until the planet phases out of this universe. Just as a boy is being dragged away to be murdered in the name of Kelly, the Kelly reveals herself to Volandis, the high priest who sentenced him, bringing the entire room to their knees. Act 5. In hopes of getting these men to see the real light, she explains that she doesn't have almighty healing abilities, that she would never live on top of a mountain, that tools were her aid to help the little girl in need. She cuts herself and heals herself right before their eyes. She even has him cut himself and heal himself, and he's still having a hard time saying that when she first arrived 700 years ago and she's alive now, it must mean she's immortal. With no extra time, Kelly implores Volandis to spread the real word. This needs to be shared with people, but Volandis' right-hand man sees that as a mistake, that it will cause their right to govern to be called into question, so he stabs Volandis and probably assumes the title of head Kelly priest. Act 6. Another 11 days has passed for the crew, and the planet is back in our universe. And the planet is basically in the 21st century. Isaac runs a scan for any mention of Kelly, and you guessed it, the world is about as crazy for Kelly as we are about the Kardashians. As the crew discusses what might have gone wrong, Kelly thinks that not having enough time to convince them was the real problem. This time around, she needs to go to the planet and stay there. Ed quickly disagrees that plan could backfire easily and she would die there, and they need to have another date. Isaac instead volunteers. Time doesn't pass in the same way for him, and his gears could keep him alive for millions of years if necessary. So Gordon drops Isaac off, and Isaac phases into the sunset. 11 seconds later, the planet reemerges, almost unrecognizable and totally science fiction-y. Just then, a vehicle approaches the Orville, hailing and asking to come aboard. Moments after permission is granted, beings beam onto the bridge with Isaac in tow. While Isaac initially was a shock to their culture, the people quickly adjusted and grew into a flourishing society, one that has spaceships all across their own universe. They assure Kelly that while she was worshipped as a deity for many centuries, it is a normal part of any growing culture to deify something or someone, that in the end, logic will win out. Ed waits for Kelly in the mess hall, but when she arrives, he realizes she is not there to get white girl wasted. Kelly tells Ed that they cannot be together, that he defied orders and protected her, and that puts his command in jeopardy. Ed knows that logically she's right, but that doesn't change how he feels, and while Kelly might feel the same, they have to forget those feelings for now.
Nice job. I am so glad that I don't get to read your recap until you're actually doing it.
Great.
Because laugh out loud moments are really, really nice.
I'm glad I could give that to you.
Yeah, so Seth wrote this one, directed by Brandon Braga, and the score by Joel McNeely. But I want to go right on record. I like Bored Ed. I like the fact that Bored Ed can't even get like people that he can order to hang out with him to hang out with him.
We can relate to him, you know,
yeah,
oh
exactly.
God, sometimes we're not cool.
Gordon explaining his jokes. I get accused of explaining jokes sometimes just because I think it's a funny follow on to a joke. I do.
That must be why he draws Captain Dix, you know, so that he can so people can't not know what he's talking about. He must need to illustrate things.
He has to, just making sure he's all jammed up. So I wonder what it says about Ed that he needed that hand injury in order to call Kelly to see if she wanted to meet in the mess hall.
Whoa. Now you're making me really sad.
I picked that up from your recap. I actually jumped down and threw that into my notes after listening to you, with a hand injury in hand, and reaches out to Kelly. So.
Wow. Well, first of all, let's just talk about that for a second. Men are the worst when they're hurt. Men are like big babies when they're sick, and they love it when when people take care of them. So this tracks.
At one point, I heard a quote from Anton Chekhov, not Pavel Chekhov.
Anton Chekhov.
And not his brother Pyotr, who may or may not have ever existed, that said, any idiot can handle a crisis. It's this day-to-day living that grinds you down. So
Whoa.
Ed may be a fantastic captain, but when his hand hurts, he needs to call... He needs to phone a friend.
He needs to phone a friend.
Yeah. So Ensign Turco...
Remind me, who are you talking about?
A random ensign in John Lamar's.
Oh, you mean that
quarters.
hottie with the body?
I didn't notice. I did not notice the hottiness nor the bodiness. I just note, both.
Her boobs were
correct
so big.
on both counts.
Her boobs were so big that she had a suntan on the top and not on the bottom. There was different definitions. She is a gorgeous woman.
She was beautiful, and she was wearing. She was not wearing her own uniform jacket. She was wearing John's brand new Lieutenant Commander uniform jacket. So that definitely was a good time.
And then, that jacket's going to smell like weed tomorrow.
Oh, who cares? It's going to smell like Ensign Turco, and it's going to be fantastic.
Oh, no, weed and Ensign Turco.
Oh, even better. Not that we condone smoking weed on Mission Log the Orville. We're just... we are just stating the facts of what we think happened.
Yeah. Well, no, she's literally blowing a vape out when he walks into the room.
That's true. Man, I thought that was a Swisher Sweet.
Oh, well, yeah. That's a blunt. Then, if that's what you're talking about.
Good deal. Upsada.
Gross.
Upsada.
It definitely looks like poop, sure.
It looked horrible. I did notice that what they were drinking from the glass was different from what they poured into the glass. Just a little different. Looked more like maybe like flat Coke or something like that when they were drinking from it instead of the mud that poured into the glass.
Okay, that's totally fair. It's funny that I definitely always kind of clock those things. I'm like, okay, well, I wonder what they made this out of for sure. Yeah.
What'd you think? Were you as horrified as I was with Latchcombe?
With the Mocklins, there's very little to be... I mean, just the fact that I know nothing is exactly what I need to know. Do you know what I mean? I think when it first happened, it was probably one of the more funnier moments that had happened so far in the series.
So, when I was watching, I'm like, hot potato. I was watching it with Tiffany, and we're like, hot potato. And then the knives come out, and both the Mocklins are like, Latchcombe!
I think I totally expected it to literally blow up. So I don't think I expected the knife part.
I didn't know what to expect. I was just like, this is a dumb game. Oh, that just happened.
And then it's got me thinking like, okay, well, what happens if you catch it elsewhere? Or like, what if you catch it while it's opening? Like, it's a very scary game for me. Literally, real hot potato is scary for me. And I don't want to play that game at all.
No, not at all. So after making the rounds and, having a drink with the Mocklins and playing Latchcombe, Ed finally rustles up the gumption for whatever reason, to call Kelly and meet in the mess hall for a drink. And he said, I think it was interesting that he took Derulio's very kind of nondescript, maybe.
Yeah.
As all but saying, right? Isn't that what he said? He all but said it was his pheromones.
Right. There's enough reasonable doubt. A lawyer would win that argument.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Sure.
Reasonable doubt.
Yeah. That maybe it wasn't your fault.
And if you remember when we did talk about Cupid's dagger, I think you and I both agreed that he was lying, but that doesn't mean that they aren't looking for I think they're both looking for ins with each other.
They are both latching. After the game of latching onto the little nugget of truth that they can use to justify their position, I think.
Wow.
That's stuff that people do. Ooh, we're getting into morals now. Let's not skip it. That's not a real moral from this episode. That's just we've got another crashed shuttle episode.
And also the terrain is not dissimilar looking from where they crashed the first time, too. Just a little bit similar.
Yeah, a little bit similar. If you're going to hit something, it's, it's probably going to be craggy, sort of mountainous terrain. The hilltop. She came from her hilltop lair. I'm
pretty sure they're filming in Chatsworth, by the way, because those are rocks that I used to smoke weed by. So
very nice. I'm
pretty sure that's where they are.
I have no similar tales to tell, sadly.
I don't condone the smoking of weed.
I did not part of the country, and I cannot tell similar stories.
Yeah, no. So Chatsworth actually is a huge. It was adjacent to a lot of like Roy Rogers Ranch, funnily enough.
Okay. Yeah.
Or like the Hi-Ho Silver or something. I don't know. Chatsworth has a bunch of places where they used to shoot. They're kind of like the Vasquez Rocks, but without the jutty parts. The Vasquez Rocks, which is like Ben Vulcan and all sorts of different.
Is that the place that was the setting in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? The ranch that was used, that was kind of an abandoned movie filming ranch?
Probably. Because I think I remember while they were filming, I wasn't in town anymore. And I was like, but Brad Pitt is in my hometown and I'm not there. What am I doing?
You're doing it wrong.
I was doing it wrong for sure.
But yeah, interesting to see, kind of not a full-on crashed episode. It would have been interesting. Well, it would have been a really boring story if they couldn't get that shuttle off the ground, because the planet would have phased away and we would have needed a new FO, a new pilot. And who else was down there? Isaac? Was it those three that went?
He would have been okay.
Yeah, he would have been okay. He would have come back and said, they died 630 years ago.
And that was
however, have saved
I've saved this planet.
I've saved this planet from cultural contamination. So the Bronze Age, I always like to do just a little bit of quick reasonableness check. The Bronze Age, do you know when I did not know when the Bronze Age was.
I didn't.
Did you know and I think different parts of the world are in the Bronze Age at different times, right? If some cultures develop more quickly, maybe they get to work with bronze and sort of early urban civilization at one period of time, but on planet Earth, the Bronze Age kind of ranged from 3300 BCE to about 1200 BCE.
Right,
before the Common Era, what we old people would call BC, but BCE, before Common Era. So quite a while ago. So the latest sort of cultures to make it to the Bronze Age was about 1200 BC.
I see.
So when they came back and 700 years had passed, they really should not have been to like 14th century development yet, according to like Earth's timeline. So these people are humming right along, man. They're developing quickly, which is good, because they did about 2100 years or maybe 1900 years of Earth development in 700 years. So good for them, man. They are a bright populace with a bright future. And they're getting stuff done.
Yeah, you're breaking my brain right now.
Yeah, but I like that though. And whose fault was this whole episode? Was it Kelly's fault? Was it Admiral Ozawa's fault? Was it Isaac's? Was it Gordon's?
Whoa!
Who? Why? I ask you, why did Kelly have the dermal scanner on her person? Yeah, because Ed cut his hand and didn't want to fess up, didn't want to tell the truth in sickbay and have a game of latchgum on his record. Like, that's the worst thing that could happen. So, root cause analysis, Ed's fault.
I would agree with that. And I think this is, no good decisions come after drinking anyway. You know,
Right,
and I know this was before drinking, but still.
Well, they were both hungover.
No,
at this
but
point.
he told her that he wasn't going to get it fixed.
Oh, yeah,
before
that's right.
went to go get a drink. But
Yeah.
his ego basically ruined an entire culture.
You might say
years.
that he is a prideful ass.
And Kelly's pissy.
She was. I noticed your. So let's dig into that a little bit, because I could not help but notice the pissiness in Kelly's tone during your recap.
She hold on. I just love that Seth MacFarlane finds such a wonderful way to criticize people in not a safe way, but not totally a punching down way. But of course, an ex-husband would call his ex-wife pissy.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so of course Isaac has heard that and would regurgitate that to her. And to me, that is just so funny. It just makes me laugh because, man, you know what? She probably does get pissy.
And it might be one of those things that he said once or twice. Maybe doesn't realize he's saying it, but of course, Isaac's going to pick up on that and remember it forever. And it's kind of like your kids do, I mean, I'll say something once or twice. Next thing I know, my kids will say, like, either A, at the age they are now, that I used to always say something, or it's like, no, I didn't always say anything. Or they would pick up on something that I said as if I said it maybe a lot because it made an impact. And I'm like, yeah, probably shouldn't have said that at all. So Ed probably shouldn't have called his ex-wife pissy, his FO,
right,
or XO,
exactly.
depending on the language du jour that they're using on the show.
Yeah, they definitely changed. They still have it.
As referred to as pissy, that was definitely
That's
not cool.
funny to me.
But your recap was definitely showed kind of like a whiny side of Kelly.
Yeah,
Did you find her?
So?
Yeah, you were like, man. Golly gee, I gotta fix this. So didn't know if there was anything you picked up on her there. There was, I definitely read a lot of empathy with her and maybe guilt in the episode where she was, this is my fault. People are dying over this. I've got to fix this.
Oh yeah.
Like I'll stay and sacrifice myself. Like she was definitely upset and feeling the burden of the situation.
Totally. And that that's exactly right. I do think that she did. I can't even imagine what it would be like if people are killing people because of Jessica. It would be cool for like a minute, but then it'd be like, this kind of sucks. So I'm kidding, by the way. But I guess she just was really dumb also. Like, why did you introduce yourself to this little girl? Why did you help her? Also, Ed says you could have left that little girl to die. Was she gonna die with that cut on her forehead, Ed? Is that what was gonna kill her?
Maybe Bronze Age. They didn't have much in the way of antibacterials, or
it might have killed her. I get it.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I don't know. We have trained professionals that are making bad decision after bad decision.
So they're making it's not quite as bad as watching something like Whale Wars, but it's everyone's.
Which I don't know what that is. What?
Oh, it's these the ship of a ship that tries to distract and keep the Japanese whaling fleets from whaling in the South Ocean. Reality TV series, but I just watched this quote unquote crew operate, and I'm like, have y'all ever been on a boat before? Have you people ever worked as a crew before? Does anybody get the first concept of, sailing or chain of command or anything like that? So it's definitely interesting. So you mentioned that should have let her die, right? So that's
what Ed said.
Yeah, it seems like they've upped the cultural contamination thing from a couple of episodes ago, where using force to get John Lamar out of jail and raiding him out of there during majority rule was an option. And now they're saying, hey, cultural contamination, you should have let this girl die. That sounds more like the prime directive, especially when it was first described in its kind of first appearance in Star Trek, the original series, where Kirk said a captain would sooner sacrifice the lives of his crew than violate the prime directive.
Right.
So very, very high. I think that was possibly in the Omega Glory, where he was talking about Captain Ron Tracy going all full native and doing his thing there. So loss of life, sacrificing maybe a couple of people to not contaminate the whole society, I think was what they were getting on there. So maybe taking that cultural contamination thing a little bit more seriously. It's probably starting to evolve as it goes forward.
I guess I'm confused because they happened upon that John Lamar, they weren't allowed to extract him.
They weren't allowed to, but they did feel like it almost seemed like it was a case-by-case basis because Ed went and asked the Admiral Tucker, I believe. We'll just call him Admiral, who always says no to things.
Yes.
Played by Ron Canada. They did ask him if they could extract him, and he said, no, you got yourself into this, you get yourself out of it. That was the comeuppance, or that was the decision. So it seemed like maybe there was a world, or there were situations where it would be okay to extract.
Well, and I do think he asks Admiral Ozawa as well, too. So, like, I think there is a chain of command, and Ed, by the way, they have no problem reaching people over space, like even in uncharted space. Like their communications are real easy, but. I think he does check in with the Admiral to get permission to fix the problem once they realize. And so, because they were also authorized to go on that planet and majority ruled in the first place.
That was a whole thing.
I think the cultural contamination has been there, but I think I wonder how much leeway they get. Like in the moment, they get to make a decision. But if Ed's bringing something, well, because they literally say that Ed does not get. He's not losing his bars, or whatever on his shoulders because Kelly didn't mean to go there, which kind of a dumb reason, but that's why. So they do take things into consideration, and the Admirals
and I think that's a rule. I think context is king, and rules are for lackeys, and context is king.
Whoa.
Yeah, I made that up myself. No, that was a Admiral or a Captain Lorca quote. So I did love the effect. We kind of talked about this a little bit in New Dimensions, the effect of a sphere kind of transitioning from, maybe, and I'm not saying that the other universe that this planet was part of was two-dimensional by any stretch of the imagination, but it did sort of phase into our three-dimensional space. And as it did, there was kind of like that flaming circle that kind of enveloped the planet as it, it got bigger, as it kind of went around the wider part of the sphere and then narrower. And I thought that was a really cool effect. And I like it when
that you pointed that out too. Yeah,
and it seemed very. It actually seemed like it was straight out of the little snippets of the book Flatland that I read, with how a sphere kind of transitioning out of 3D into 2D space would look like a circle of varying sizes. Yeah. So I thought that was super interesting that would appear in this episode. So maybe somebody in the writers' room read that book and thought, man, we can mine some cool ideas out of it.
So here's the thing, too, and I don't think this is the morals, meanings, and things, but so the planet phases, Kelly heals the little girl, they don't know there's a problem, and they come back to this 14th century Bronze Age type deal. Why did they go just grab clothes and not see if no one was, they were making such dumb choices too.
I don't know, because they even said, hey, let's see if they can, synthesize some, local clothing. Now, they didn't have a lot of time, so I think time was definitely an enemy because the planet was going to phase out. However...
But no one checked to see if no one's in that house or...
I know, and if you're going to do it, you gotta kind of... do it, stealthy, right? Maybe run behind a tree and then, peek from around the tree and then, take the things off. I've seen people steal clothes off of clotheslines before, Jessica. We've all seen it.
We've all seen movies.
I've seen movies where they do it, and they kind of get skinny behind the, behind the pole that's holding the clotheslines up, and then they pull them out and then they run away. Exactly. So why they didn't do that, I don't know. It was Gordon's idea. And then he was the first one to complain about the clothes once he put them on.
This is true.
He was like, these clothes are going to give me dysentery.
Which is so not nice because that woman obviously cleaned them.
And they were freshly washed.
That's what I was going to say.
That's the thing. Yeah.
He's so rude. That woman, she didn't poop on her clothing.
No, totally did not. I think I think Gordon was unappreciative of the clothes that she probably gave them willingly after the blessing of the child and the thing. I think that was
100%. They should have never done it. They were super dumb. They should have never done it.
So we get that, and then we have the other talk with Admiral Ozawa. when she finds out that Ed was lying in his report,
right,
and said, "You're going to be scrubbing toilets at Union Point, a bright future in porcelain," as you put it. I like that. Man, they are fast and loose with the formal reprimands on this show.
Yeah.
So it seems like about every other show, somebody's getting a formal reprimand.
Well, and what you were saying earlier about how Kirk's like, I would never break the Prime Directive. It's all that he does is break So we do need to see them be able to like make decisions, and like I do ascribe to the theory of leadership where it's like I'm going to make a decision and then deal with the consequences as opposed to ask for permission. And in some ways that's what they're doing. But yes, they they didn't give one to Alara, who definitely deserved one for invoking Directive 38.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. No bare feet in engineering, right?
Exactly. I wonder if Lamar does that. I wonder if he's like walking around with soda
Probably
and
just
bare feet.
Drinking a soda, bare feet, walking around. Hey, finish that up. We can go get wasted.
Yeah. On some pap.
But they did. So he did. He broke Admiral Ozawa's, direction, order, I guess, where he said, "Don't go back. Just stay there. Wait for them to contact you, and and don't even think about going back down there." Cut the scene. We're going back down there, and they get to the church, right? And God love you for sussing out this guy's name.
Belondis,
yeah. I just had him as big hat guy and little hat guy.
Pontiff was almost. I was about to call him Pontiff or something.
Yeah, Pontificus. But yeah, so big hat guys seem to get it. He seemed to understand the situation. Could you take a knife and cut your hand like that?
No,
I see that all the time in different shows. I'd be like, no, I believe you. Yeah, no, I saw you do it. I'm good. Like,
also, she's cutting through a tendon. I mean, also, here's the other thing. I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Latchcomb, he could have lost feeling in his hand. He's lucky that I went through. I don't. What? He's out of. But like, also, when they cut the hand, no blood. Does that? I
just
guess it would,
bloody? Yeah. Like it was like you could see the no dripping blood.
Would it do that?
I don't know. It never occurred to me to try.
I definitely don't want to find out, Mike. I don't want to find out. I
cut my hands enough by mistake that I'm not going to do it on purpose.
I'll share. One time I used a staple gun the wrong way, and I put my hand up against it, thinking it was going to give it more leverage, but I instead shot a staple into my hand. And that was like, oh, I did this. And as I pulled it out and I looked at it and go, okay. And then it started pooling. So it does take a minute.
Okay.
I don't want to cut my hand like that, though. It just doesn't make any sense.
No.
Even if you had told me, like, prick your finger and give us a blop of blood, I don't want to do that. No, thank you.
Yeah. No, I get it. So I was surprised, not surprised, and we could probably get to this a little bit later also when we get to the more serious tones, that the leader, the big-hatted priest of Kelly, was the truth cannot be compromised. The people have to know this. They have to be able to make their own choice. And then you get your little hat envy guy who says, hey, people get inspiration from Kelly, but they also get fear from her. And without that fear, we're not going to be able to govern. AKA, they're probably going to kick me out of this house. There's going to be anarchy. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill you and take your big hat. I'm assuming he took the big hat. I think it sounded like from your recap, he took the big hat as well.
He took the big Kelly hat, for sure.
Yeah. So I did not like that whatsoever. But 21st century rolls around. It looked a lot like the 21st century, didn't it? I'm just calling it the 21st century. I don't know what century it was.
I would call it the 21st century.
They probably have a whole like Common Era BCE, CE thing based on the first healing, I think they called it, the primary healing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably how their calendar works. But yeah, it looked a lot like current day planet Earth. And I was thinking what Kelly could have done to make things right was go on an apology tour.
Oh.
Yeah, go on the shows, go on The View, go on Fallon, or whatever they have there. Probably similar things.
That's all she would have needed to do.
The morning talk. But Ed called her out. He was like, hey, this is the computer age. They're probably more skeptical. They might put you in an insane asylum. They might, who knows? I think they were so such religious zealots, or at least it seemed like from the glimpses that we got that they might have, actually like put her in jail or convicted her of some kind of heresy. So
it's so hard to say. Like, I guess it's a good question worth examining. Like, what would we do if the man that we have depicted in our paintings as Jesus came down and was like, listen, guys, y'all gone crazy. You know?
And he wasn't 6 foot tall with blonde hair and blue eyes.
Well, I guess that's what I mean. I know he wasn't actually, but what if he were to come to us as that exact image, because really in reality, what this episode really makes me think is, oh my God, Jesus is a space traveler.
Spaceman.
Like, I love that theory so much better. I really do.
It's there's lots of theories, and we'll get a little bit more to that when we and we'll transition just after a couple of other things. I loved I guess it would be somewhere around 28th century planet that we saw, the last version of the phasing planet, which I don't think ever had a name.
It never had a name.
Yeah. But I looked at that and I was like, Coruscant.
Here's my question though.
Okay.
Is that planet going to be able to survive all of that industrialization? Like,
maybe they got clean energy. I don't know.
Sure. I just, but doesn't look like there's any plants. There doesn't look like there's. It was confusing. That's all.
Well, when they introduced Coruscant in Star Wars, they said the entire planet is one large city. So,
right.
Do they have some areas cordoned off, I hope, for parkland, green space? I look at New York City as an example. I mean, there's some prime real estate that is, dedicated to Central Park. So maybe if they can kind of keep that kind of city planning in mind, they can.
I'm sure they do. It's just, all of a sudden, like, when we're thinking so much about climate change here and all of our industrialization, it looked like that planet was choking from outfits of, industrialization. So I'm curious.
And I loved the, we talked a little bit about Tron in New Dimensions with the, I think this made it into the final cut.
We'll see.
The Tron landscape that they were driving through. And I loved the Tron clothes. The two folks from, the latest iteration of the phasing planet we saw were wearing those kind of white, robes with kind of circuitry embedded in them. I was like,
it's so flipping cool. They just managed to make it actually look futuristic, but not like so egregiously so.
They did. I think it looked excellent. I kind of like the brightness of it. It looked fantastic. So
couldn't agree more. Very cool.
Any more observations on
I'm sure I have more that are things that are going to annoy me. Something about this episode. But for now, I just rather let's talk about the morals, messages, and meaning.
Yeah, feel free to bring it up when we transition to the next section. But it's time to move on.
We're doing that.
We're phasing out of here, and we're going to go 700 years in the future.
Wow, that was a fast 700 years, Mike.
That was a fast 700 years.
And we've come to the part of the show where we're going to explore the big ideas in the episode Mad Idolatry, as well as the messages, morals, and meanings, and see if this episode aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. Whew. So, Mike, what do you really got to talk? Like, what do you really want to talk about?
Well, I enjoyed this episode.
You did?
I really did. I kind of feel like it's ground that has been, well churned before, farmed, mined, whatever the analogy is. The original series had an episode called The Paradise Syndrome, where Captain Kirk lost his memory in a society and a planet that looked a lot like, inhabited by Native Americans. And he healed a boy with, I think, like mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and he kind of did this weird thing where he pumped his legs.
Okay.
I don't know. Okay, now it just sounds weird. But the folks, the indigenous folks, saw him do this, and they treated him like a god, and they acted like a god. And he even did like the, where he bled, and the guy that wanted to replace him was like, "Behold, the god who bleeds." And I just couldn't help think of that when the big-headed guy was like, "You bleed." Next Gen had an episode called Who Watches the Watchers. I haven't seen that one in a while, but that was, I believe, a Picard episode where they were kind of doing this. They had this duck blind, and they were spying on people that that were not warp capable. So it was just kind of like a keep an eye on thing. That never goes well. There have been several of those episodes. Never goes well. But Picard, I think, saved somebody. They ended up idolizing him. There was an episode of Deep Space Nine called Meridian, where a planet phased in and out of time, and actual the people were either physically present or they were just consciousness for a period of time. And Jadzia Dax fell in love with one of their folks and was going to go with. Voyager had a great episode called Blink of an Eye, where they were in orbit around a planet, kind of messing things up. It was causing earthquakes and things like that. But, time passed much faster on the surface than it did for Voyager. So they were looking up at the star in the sky that was kind of causing these earthquakes and things like that. And a religion kind of started to form about that. And you got to see this society develop from basically Stone Age to, or maybe Bronze Age. I don't really know. I'm not an archaeologist. I'm no Picard. But from, somewhat primitive to advanced enough to actually help Voyager and push them back out of orbit so that they could go on their way. And then, not very different ground really than what we saw in If the Stars Should Appear, right? We've got,
that's exactly what I was thinking too.
I think we know where Seth is on religion, and I think there's always the possibility that it could be misused, right? Used for power, used for, used to control. I think maybe some of these other Star Trek episodes, especially Blink of an Eye, at least made the point that it was inspiring to some people, that they looked up and always saw something there, something to aspire to, something to think about, a goal to reach for. So there's that side of it also. So there's the big-headed guy side of it, where it's like the truth can never be compromised, and we gotta, we've got to let the people decide for themselves. And then there's the little-hatted, hat envy guy's side of thing that just wants to control things. So I think there's those two things. So I liked the episode. I think it's a message that, and a story that can never be told too much.
Sure.
But I think a lot of the ground was sort of already mulched.
That's kind of how I felt, even though it is in a different way. And we're seeing really this episode overarching is to learn the difficulty that is ahead of Ed and Kelly to be in a relationship, and the personal connections we have with people, and how that might make us our judgment be off a little bit. So like, really, even though this is an opportunity, again, like you're right, for Seth to share maybe his atheistic views and stuff like that, we do walk away more with an understanding of like, oh, Kelly and Ed are this is the challenge of them being together, as opposed to just being upset with each other, right? But yes, it did kind of feel like a similar story to If the Stars Should Appear, which made me question, did we need this episode? In some ways, I like this episode. So my answer is yes, I like both, and it's interesting. It's just it is interesting that they happen so close together, and that there is some similar themes here.
There is, and I think there's this show might have another layer to it than just the religion part. And when I look at the kind of the A plot of the planet accelerating and the Kelly religion taking off and kind of forming a life of its own, with the B plot of Ed and Kelly maybe getting together, and maybe their availability for each other or their feelings for each other kind of phase in and phase out, and are they going to take advantage of those feelings, or move on them when they do, was similar. I think there were similar thoughts between the importance of the truth in both the A plot and the B plot. So yeah, I think this is different enough from If the Stars Should Appear that it was worth telling. I think it was definitely worth it, another episode.
I would agree, and so this is like, it's jumping to, does it align? But Gene Roddenberry wanted believed that we could have this world where we were in harmony and logic dictated and discovery was at the forefront as opposed, and harmony was too. And so when we meet the culture in the future of us, that has passed us by hundreds of years in both technology and even, the word I'm looking for is philosophy. Sure. And that's very Star Trek, is that you have to trust that logic is going to win out. And it kind of makes the argument that if Isaac didn't go and they just waited another 700 years, like the Admiral said, by the way,
right,
they would have advanced and they would have moved. That's kind of the thing I'm walking away with.
I agree with that also. So do you, because I didn't know whether or not Isaac's presence on the planet helped move them along that far or not. It seemed like that planet was cooking along pretty well, going from, Bronze Age to 14th century to 21st century to what I can only assume would be 28th century, which is, the Orville set in the 25th century.
Right.
It seems like they are far ahead, and not only a little far ahead, way far ahead. So did Isaac help that advancement, or did he just kind of observe? What did you come away with?
I helped. They advanced whether I would have been there or not. Like he said, my being there didn't influence their advancement, and I just think that that's impossible to say that that's true, especially if he created a culture shock when he first got there. But perhaps it got them off of the religious train sooner.
That's a good point, and I did not necessarily question his words when he said, "I did not help, I just observed." So I guess there's a couple of options that could have happened. One is he helped and he fed them new technology. One was he didn't help. He did just kind of strictly observe, and that was it. And then I think the third option was that the folks on the planet saw this advanced alien non-carbon based life form and said, wow, there's a lot more out there for us than we understand, and kind of kicked themselves into high gear, knowing that they were not alone.
Yeah. I think we had to hear Isaac say that he didn't influence them because it would be cultural contamination yet again.
Right.
And I, no one's telling Ed, let's just think here and let's take a pause.
Yeah.
Everyone, we've made a couple of mistakes, and sending Isaac is probably not going to further this along any other way. Yeah. We also still don't know how it's easy to talk about, oh, look at this nondescript planet that doesn't have a name, and they have the deity, and it's named Kelly, which, by the way, is hilarious to me that people think the name is Kelly is glorious. That's hilarious to me. But we don't know how, either in the Star Trek universe or the Orville universe, how we moved past Jesus as well too, or
right,
non-secular gods. So I would really be curious to learn how they did that, because they did not take an example from their own society as well.
Good point. I know in the original series they kind of went back and forth on religion a number of times, and I think that is a combination of different writers, different showrunners at different times.
Isn't there an episode where there's the sun, and they literally talk about they'll be fine because they believe in a Jesus kind of thing. Yeah.
So that was, they kept talking about the word of the sun, and when they went to the Roman planet, the Roman gladiator planet, and at the very end of the episode, somebody says, interesting that a planet that has achieved such technological advancements still worships the sun. And Uhura said they're not talking about the sun in the sky, they're talking about the Son of Man. And they were like, wow, and it's all getting ready to unfold again. So that was sort of a pro-Christianity episode towards there at the end. There was another episode, Who Mourns for Adonais, or Adonai, or as many people say, Adonis, an episode where they reach the Yeah, they've got the Roman god Apollo.
I didn't know they called him
and he's
that.
there,
Yeah.
and he's kind of all big and bad. And he says to the crew of the Enterprise, "You should worship the gods." And Kirk said, "In our time, we have no use for gods." And it was supposed to, like, that was it. That's how the line was written.
Yeah.
And due to censorship, the line was added. We find the one quite sufficient. So yeah, where that episode was trying to go is we don't need religion at this point. And that's a decision that folks can make going forward for themselves. But yeah, so Star Trek has kind of gone back and forth over time of whether or not there is a role of religion in the future. I thought it was curious that Ed said go to hell to Priya Levesque.
Yeah.
And I also thought it was kind of cool that Priya Levesque didn't know what that meant.
Yes. That says a lot. It says a lot.
So I think there is sort of this sort of phasing out of not necessarily belief and faith in those kind of things, but just maybe maybe more of a phasing in of critical thought and logic and exploration and things like that.
And I love the idea that no matter what, logic is going to win out. That just given a chance, people eventually will get there. I think that's a very optimistic way to look at things, and I'm an optimist. And right now, it's really hard to look at that being the case against the backdrop of what our world is right now. But I love that the reigning theory is that it will win out. Being good will win out.
Yeah, I think progress wins out, and I think the people that are trying to halt progress always dig in and slow that progress. But I do think that things like that do move forward. And when you look at the kind of the 14th century version of the planet, of the people, where there's that kind of that old Irish woman, and that's a very kind of Star Trek thing, is kind of make the poor the poor farming people speak with a brogue, as three of my four grandparents are from Ireland.
Oh,
I
really?
think it's I got stuck with the waspy last name, but I'm part Griffith, Brosnahan, and Murphy on the other three. So.
Griffith, Brosnahan,
and Murphy. Yeah. So I was kind of chuckle, and then I don't know if I should feel offended when the poor kind of overly religious folk and any Star Trek foreign culture has an Irish brogue. But Kelly's watching you. That was a thing. That was almost like a Santa Claus thing.
Yeah, it really was.
She'll know if you've been good or bad. And then they had the whole kind of Salem witch trial thing of Kelly will heal the innocent. Well, I have a question for you. Have you ever tried to prove or disprove this hypothesis of yours? And has Kelly ever healed anybody that's been accused? Standing there with their arms cut up in the up in the gallows or whatever their torture device or trial device, I should say, is. I'm sure nobody's ever been accused.
Which is why the kid is like, show mercy, please, because he knows he's going to die.
He knows how the court system's rigged. So I'm just saying, like, maybe take somebody that didn't do something wrong, cut their arm, stick them up on the thing, and try to prove or disprove this hypothesis of yours.
Maybe they're a carnal sinner. Maybe they sinned in their head.
So yeah, and there's a big, if that's true, and then maybe it just proved that they did something that you just don't know about.
That's what I'm saying. We just don't know.
Yeah, good point. What I do see, or what I would like to see, is some sort of evolution away from that kind of scary, blind faith, controlling by fear version of religion that they had in the 14th century that I think I still know some people that buy into quite a bit, family members, and more of just that kind of aspirational, what can I do to be the best human being I can do, and what are the what's sort of the ideal end of our evolution. as we go there. And speaking of that, I really did. I honestly liked Big Headed Guy. He seemed to know he knew the history. He seemed to be a religious scholar. He was willing to examine his own beliefs. He was willing to change his position. And it's nice that we met him, because now we finally found Alara's type. So she meets what she thinks is the perfect boyfriend, just in time for him to get stabbed by little-headed guy. So sadly, no progress in the love life of Alara Katan in this episode.
Yeah, I poor Lara. I relate. But I think you bring up a good point, that it would not be fair to lump all people who believe in a religion as illogical, unable to see the truth, unable to reason, they want the good. There is that is what religion is supposed to offer, is faith and comfort and community and goodness. And it is the people that learn how to abuse that can hurt others. And big hat guy, didn't know what to do, but knew he had to do something. And so
I'd like to know Seth MacFarlane's view on this, because we've seen a couple of examples of religions gone wrong, right?
Yeah,
and if the star should appear in this episode, and I wonder if it's a cautionary tale against bad religion, or if it's just a distrust and lack of, I don't know if I'd say respect, but lack of belief in the role of any religion, because I'm all about cautionary tales for bad religion. I think that makes sense.
My guess would be that he's really making an argument against power and absolute power and the abuse of power. And it's kind of generous for him to say, again, because he's writing the episode, so he is saying this, that like it's normal for a society to grow up deifying something.
Right.
So it's generous for him to say that like, of course we want a faith. And of course we're going to move past that. And I think it's an argument against power more than anything.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. The grace that the woman showed the last two folks, I did not catch either of their names.
I don't believe they have names.
And
they moved beyond the need for names.
The Beyonders. They were awesome. And the grace that she showed when she said, society has to learn, it has to evolve. And if the mythology did not identify Kelly as our deity, it would have identified something else.
Right.
And we would have gone through the same growing pains as we did either way.
Yeah. That's I think that's the message, and it's a hopeful one, because you can't help but draw the allusions to our world. Obviously, this is when you're doing an idealistic future of space travel. This is why I was saying this is very Star Trek. We want to be in this world ultimately.
Yeah, we do, and we want to make it work and evolve to the point where we're not endangering each other's existence.
Yeah.
Speaking about endangering each other's existence, I am the king of the segue, Jessica.
I mean, I'm so impressed. I can't begin to guess what you're going to ask me.
How'd you like Ed and Kelly's decision? Mostly Kelly's decision that Ed sort of bought into, to, I'll just say, not get drunk at the end of the episode, to not get together, to not pursue a relationship. Maybe at this time, or at least while they're working together, it sounded like.
It's the right decision, especially because we did not see Ed make smart decisions yet. And so, if he needs to send her to an away mission, he might not want to. They're. I don't know. I'm a romantic, and I would love to believe that you can make it work no matter what. But that's not logical, and that's what Ed says. So I think she's making a hard call.
And I loved the line that he said, "If I'm honest with myself,
Yep,
I'll I see the same thing because, he was not exactly being honest. A little white lie maybe about not going to sick bay and trying to cover up his Latchcombe injury.
Sure.
He, a little lie to protect his crew member, to protect his FO, not putting the cultural contamination in his report. So a couple of little white lies caught up with him. And this one, if he knew, like, hey, if I'm being honest with myself, I know this isn't going to work. Also, that was just sort of another thing that I kind of threw all in that big bag of, the truth being important, and big-hatted guy saying the truth is always of consequence. So that was sort of a thread that ran through the whole episode. And
wow, what a good point.
My little pea brain.
No, it's a good point. The right decision is not always the easiest one, and I'm glad that at the very least they're like our feelings may be different, but we'll have to forget them for now, and that is so hard. Our feelings are so raw,
Yeah, and they guide us in ways that really, really betray our ability to do the right thing sometimes.
Yep.
And the heart has reasons know not of. We talked about Blaise Pascal number of weeks ago with the Pascal's Gambit, but he also is the founder of that quote: "The heart has reasons knows not why." And that happens. So you try to be logical and you try to think, but when it comes to those sort of matters, they get in the way of your judgment at times. So morals, messages, and meanings for me that I came away with is, the truth must never be compromised. The truth always stands up to scrutiny.
Sure. And
I loved the line of mythology would have found another face. It was simply a stage of learning. And this one gets me right in the gut. Reason, discovery, and the endurance of the logical mind is what we should be believing in.
I don't know about you, but Seth just gave me a new religion.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah, and that's I think very much the humanistic belief that humans can, one, survive, adapt, overcome, evolve into something more than what we are now. I mean, that's in every bit of Roddenberry Trek, from original series episodes to especially the motion picture, which is much maligned. But if you haven't watched the motion picture in a while, go back and do it. That is all about sort of human evolution to the next level. And just Ed's lines of the truth when I'm honest with myself and those kind of things. That's to me why I think this makes a good episode of the Orville and does align very well with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy.
I agree. Well, Mission Log The Orville is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is podcast.roddenberry.com.
Join us next time on Mission Log The Orville as we discuss Jaloja.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.